Teddy Roosevelt once said, "Risk is like fire. If controlled, it will help you. If uncontrolled, it will rise up and destroy you." Fortunately, that is what a recent study on enterprise risk management for ambidextrous intelligence proved. More accurately, the study's goal is to ensure that risk management functions are adequately equipped to control fires and manage risk to financial institutions' advantage. We started our study examining a common fallacy that we often hear when we have risk discussions with clients. "Oh, we've been doing enterprise risk management for years now." But when we sit down and look at their models, their policies, procedures, organizational structure, and even measure their risk culture using Opimus's proprietary risk culture indicator, we find that they've been doing anything but enterprise risk management. Based on our analysis of risk management practices across financial institutions, our study led us to classify firms' risk management capabilities in one of 5 buckets. The first one being dysfunctional and non-compliant. The second one being regulatory compliance focused. The third one, informational planning focused. The fourth one, strategic advantage focused. And finally, ambidextrously intelligent enterprise risk management functions. Before we dive into these characterizations and where each financial institution falls, let's talk more generally about enterprise risk management for a second. When we examine the historical and in some cases current organizational structure and approach to enterprise risk management within financial institution, we see that typically the chief risk officer reports to the board and CEO. Then you have your credit risk, market, liquidity risk, operational risk, and other functional risk departments such as asset management risk and wealth management risk, in addition to newly created risk units such as information security and model risk management, for instance. But each of these risk units has its own separate set of data, systems, models, policies, procedures, incentives, and in some cases, even distinct risk cultures. This siloed approach to risk management might seem to work at the onset of things, but in reality, our study has shown that it exerts tremendous costs on firms. Each siloed risk management unit focuses on their vertical. So for example, you have credit risk focusing on PD, LGD, EAD. You have operational risk focusing on things like severity or frequency. And there's no discussion of enterprise risk and managing risk management at the top of the house. The people and the models don't talk to each other. The policies are not in sync, and the risk is not managed holistically. We believe that these firms are missing the forest for the trees. And they'll be distastefully shocked when the next crisis comes, because once the fire is left uncontrolled, it will not miss the forest for the trees. A question that is commonly asked is, why do we need enterprise risk management? Why fix something that's not broken? The answer that most people give is because regulators say so. Our recent study indicates that the answer to that question is quite the opposite of regulatory compliance. For starters, a strong enterprise risk management culture and function will help firms evolve their siloed risk management functions. So for example, operational risk, market risk, and credit risk, force them to manage risk holistically, move away from viewing risk as a pure compliance function, gain a bird's eye view for risk identification, measurement, mitigation, and management, progress from viewing risk management departments as a pure cost center and necessary evil to true business partner and giving them a seat at the table. So what does an ERM function look like? We believe that in order for a firm to have a proactive ERM framework, for it to be effective, efficient, and relevant, it cannot be bought off the shelf, but rather constructed by the individuals responsible for risk management, strategy, finance, operations, technology, and the business units. In 1991, Warren Buffett testified before Congress as chairman of Salomon Brothers. He asked every Salomon employee to be his or her own compliance officer. Today, firms must ensure that every employee is his or her own risk manager and that they exemplify the overall risk culture of the firm. In order to do this, we must first build enterprise risk management frameworks upon a strong core of principles that are not susceptible to continuous change. By inoculating a risk culture, organizational design, and governance process tailored to the firm's strategic, financial, and operational plans. Simultaneously, we must persist in the quest for improvement and continuous innovation in risk management via data systems and analytics. We cannot overemphasize the importance of understanding synergies and knock-on effects between these enterprise risk management building blocks. So what do these building blocks look like today? Let's start off by looking at the spending numbers. Today, the top 50 global financial institutions spend $23 billion annually on enterprise risk management. This figure does not account for failures to manage risk, such as losses due to market events and regulatory fines and that are a result of fraud or noncompliance. By 2019, the top 50 financial institutions will spend a total of $31 billion annually on enterprise risk management. Now, it might be difficult to talk about culture, governance, organizational design in terms of spend, since firms cannot quantify or intelligibly articulate the status of those areas in a uniform way. Instead, let's start by looking at the people behind culture, organizational design, and governance. Since the 2008 crisis, headcount in ERM has increased by 10 or 20-fold, which is representative of the lagging risk management practices amongst these financial institutions. Talent accounts for almost 2/3 of total ERM spend. Rightfully so, the most important ERM investment financial institutions must make is in developing long-term talent. Similarly, the biggest threat to ERM within firms is retention, as we commonly see talented risk managers jump from one firm to another. Firms should set up long-term incentive structures to improve retention rates in risk management departments. HR departments must collaborate with chief risk officers to align individuals' goals with the firm's overall objectives. CROs and senior risk managers should look to other business units such as asset management and wealth management to learn how they maintain high talent retention rates. ERM talent and recruiting retention should always be top of mind for the C-suite and board of directors. Next up is data, systems, and analytics. Enterprise risk data consolidation requires considerable investment and can rapidly deplete ERM budget. This is particularly true for firms that have not made proactive investments in data management capabilities. Firms that are playing catch-up to realize it is no longer feasible to run data management in an ad hoc manner. Additionally, firms with multiple data silos and platforms are now investing tremendous amounts on enterprise data efforts to centralize all of their data and get what's so-called a single source of the truth. As we've seen, financial institutions are keenly aware of how much they're spending on ERM. However, when asked what their return on investment is from ERM, they offer a mix of vague and somewhat academic responses. As we engage in this dialogue, please bear in mind that most financial institutions know exactly how much money they make for each dollar they spend on different projects or assets under management, geographies, and people. It is disappointing then that these same firms cannot articulate how much return is generated from their investment in enterprise risk management. In today's post-crisis era, or what firms are calling the regulatory tsunami, firms must undergo a fundamental paradigm adjustment, and the issues must change from how much should we spend, and is it too little or too little, too much or too little what we're spending, to how much are we gaining or how much are we losing from enterprise risk management. And what is the return on investment from enterprise risk management? As boards and CEOs hunt for a penny here and a cent there to keep shareholders happy, it is no longer acceptable to think of enterprise risk management spend, risk management failures, and legal fines as a cost of doing business. According to our research, this mindset can decrease total return on equity by as much as 4 to 6%. So in addition to safe harboring the firm from risk and ensuring compliance with regulations, senior management, boards of directors, shareholders, and employees deserve to understand how much money they are making or losing because of their enterprise risk management functions. This type of mindset will ensure that enterprise risk management is as efficient and effective as possible. At what we're calling the Optimus Risk and Public Policy Institute, we propose creating an enterprise risk management P&L statement of sorts, which we'll get to in just a minute. At the beginning of our discussion, I talked about 5 buckets of risk management that our study identified. The first one being dysfunctional and non-compliant firms, the second one being reactive, regulatory compliance-focused firms, third one being risk management for informational planning, the fourth one, enterprise risk management for strategic advantage, and finally, enterprise risk management for ambidextrous intelligence. I prefer explaining things using figures and graphs, so let's draw this out and understand where each of these buckets are step by step. So on the y-axis, we have ERM competence, and on the x-axis, we have return on investment. The ERM building blocks that we just discussed can be viewed as investment levers in absolute monetary terms, and implicit effort, time, and cooperation, which are the ultimate determinants of a firm's enterprise risk management level of competence. The competency bucket that organizations fall in and how they attend to their ERM hierarchy of needs will inevitably determine the return on investment for enterprise risk management. At the very bottom of the chart, we have dysfunctional and non-compliance-centered institutions. We all know who these firms are, since they're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times every other day. Fraud in one part of the firm, mispricing of risk in another part. These organizations have no mastery of the known risks and little to no understanding of their known unknown risks. And as a result, the growing regulatory burden is just unfathomable for them. These organizations set aside outrageous sums for regulatory fines as they recognize they are non-compliant but have no clue how to fix their problems. They're stuck investing in systems and analytics to fix their problems, which also ends in failure because they should be investing in a different building block. In order to overcome being dysfunctional, these firms must change their organizational design, hire and empower the right talent, and create the right incentives and tools. Next up is regulatory-driven organizations. Regulatory-driven organizations are motivated by fear of regulatory scrutiny and fines in nearly all of their risk management decision-making. These organizations are reactive in nature, and in our opinion, they are ripe for acquisition and/or failure. These firms incur reputational risks day in and day out by constantly verging towards noncompliance. In order to move above the ERM competence line, these organizations must invest in the foundational building blocks of people and governance. As we get closer to the break-even point, we have the informational planning organizations, which are really the most interesting, since they invest heavily in ERM, but accept fines as a way of doing business. Similar to dysfunctional organizations, these organizations budget hefty sums every year for fines and fees. They have the right systems and people in place. However, they don't have the right cultural mindset. Improvements in risk culture can get these firms a higher return on investment from enterprise risk management over the medium term. Next up, we have strategic advantage. Organizations in the strategic advantage bucket are proactive in identifying, measuring, and managing risks. Strategic risk management is at the core of their culture. They leverage their enterprise risk management as a decision-making tool for nearly all their activities throughout the firm. They have the right governance and right cultural approach. Finally, we have firms that utilize enterprise risk management for ambidextrous intelligence. These firms are really the cream of the crop when it comes to enterprise risk management capabilities. And it's really resulting from years of investments in enterprise risk management needs. These organizations set the stage for how regulators govern their peers. They are not shaken by unknown unknowns, known knowns, or known unknown risks. Finally, these organizations have a significantly higher return on equity and return on risk-weighted assets because of their enterprise risk management frameworks. In order to move from one level of competence to another, firms must make the right investment in the appropriate risk management lever. In our study, as we translated the enterprise risk management building blocks into investment levers, we observed firms wanting to move from one level to another without making the proper investments at the right level. One firm wanted to stop racking up billions of dollars in fines. Another wanted to set a risk appetite that can be used as a compass for the firm's decision-making activity. Another one wanted to use analytics for daily decision-making. All of these commendable enterprise risk management value-oriented goals are accomplishable if and only if firms make an investment in the right lever and the right enterprise risk management building block. For an exhaustive list and framework of where investments should be made, you can visit the Optimus Risk and Public Policy portal under the Optimus platform, where you can use the framework for a detailed self-assessment. By now, we hope we've created a new paradigm for thinking about enterprise risk management. To identify the return on investment from ERM, Optimus built a number of what we call enterprise risk management profitability models. We determined that the best model could draw clear indications of a firm's competence and return on equity. If an organization identifies as being dysfunctional or regulatory driven, there's much work to be done before a positive return on investment from ERM can be realized. The goal for these organizations should be to get out of the penalty box, as their current risk management practices exert significant costs on their firms and inhibits their return on equity potential. Organizations with an enterprise risk management competence of informational planning, or at the break-even point, so to speak, their enterprise risk management frameworks don't really help them, but they don't hurt them either. So they should consider moving into different buckets. Firms that have a strategic advantage-oriented ERM can realize most, if not all, of the qualitative return on investments. And finally, organizations that have an ambidextrously intelligent enterprise risk management structure can realize both the implicit, non-qualifiable and absolute monetary term returns on investment, and explicit, directly quantifiable in absolute monetary terms return on investments. Here's a worked example of enterprise risk management return on investment based on an ambidextrously intelligent firm that has realized an additional 4% in return on equity. To wrap up, risk is like fire. If controlled, it will help you. If uncontrolled, it will rise up and destroy you. That being said, the goal of enterprise risk management is to control the fire for the firm's advantage by helping it achieve a higher return on equity while simultaneously managing risk holistically. Thank you.